I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, April the 12th, brought to you in part by Livestock Risk Services, your LRP specialists, headed up by Dakota Moss there, officing in the Exchange building at the Oklahoma National Stockyards right there in Oklahoma City. You look at his team there that we have listed, the rest of the agents that work there with him. You guys are going to be turning cattle out this summer, and you think, well, I probably ought to get an LRP on them. Everybody's saying that's the deal, and I said, I need to do that. And you keep putting it off, you keep putting it off, keep putting it off. If you look at these strike prices out here, if you're planning on pulling those cattle off grass late this summer or early in the fall, you can't believe what they got these cattle pegged at to bring. You can lock that in, guys. And if you don't really understand it, you're not sure about it, just call them. Doesn't cost anything to call them. Give them a call, tell them what you got, tell them what you're interested in. They'll tell you where you're at, where you can lock those cattle in, and most importantly, what it's going to cost. Get a hold of them, livestockriskservices.com. Also, Limousine and Limb Flex. I was at the Wolf Cattle Company sale last week over there in Hudson Oaks, Texas, and Wolf Cattle Company is out of Minnesota. And I tell you what, I was really impressed with the demand they had for those Limousine and Limb Flex cattle that they have, guys. They want to make these cattle weigh 1,600 pounds. It's hard to do with a straight English steer, guys. So the Limousine and Limb Flex people are focusing on feed efficiency, improved marbling, superior yield grade, and calving ease. Let Limousine and Limb Flex take you full circle. Go to NALF.org. Dry Flint Hills, we're not used to that. The Flint Hills sit on the eastern side of Kansas, and you can pretty typically draw that dry line right up through the very center of Kansas and straight down from there on whether you get any moisture to the east or if it's drier in hell to the west. Well, look at this drought monitor that I'm showing you. Look at the extreme drought in Kansas. A lot of other places that were in extreme drought recently have come out of it, especially out west. Parts of North Texas have come out of it. Texas Panhandle's always in a drought. But most of Oklahoma's out of it and sitting in decent shape. But Kansas is still suffering. Northern Plains has gotten all that snow. It's starting to melt. The rocks are getting soft up there. But in Kansas, it is extremely dry, especially on the west side. But if you look at that little loop that's coming up there over on the east side, that's getting into the Flint Hills, guys. And the lower part of the Flint Hills is extremely dry. And you guys that don't know, you say, why are you always talking about the Flint Hills? Well, it's 4 million acres of blue stem tall grass country there, and there's not anything out there but grazing. You've got a turnpike that goes up through the middle of it there. It's beautiful country, and it's been preserved. Most of it, they lease the pasture out. They found out that it's more conservative and better for the pasture if you double stock or turn twice as many cattle out for half as much time rather than to run them out all summer, late in the summer when it gets really dry out there. So the bulk of those pastures out there are leased pastures out to people that turn stock or cattle out there, and they're only out there for 90 days for the most part. Excuse me, but they burn those pastures off this time of year, and talked to guys over the last couple of weeks. They burned most of that pasture off, especially the northern half of the Flint Hills there. They burned that off, and if you haven't seen that, it's really impressive to see. But why did they do that? Well, several hundred years ago, when the Indians used to hunt that part of the country there, and hunt buffalo through there, the Indians noticed that whenever they had brush fire in that strip through there, that the buffalo hunting was so much better. So they started sending scouts out early to set fires on that pasture so that the hunting would be so much better whenever they come. They brought the whole tribe out there to go hunting. But it's amazing how they could figure that out back in that time without any kind of radar or anything going off up there. But it has continued to do that. It makes those pastures just plush green, no brush or anything like that. It looks like you could kick your boots off and just walk across it barefoot and it'd be plush grass all throughout. But it's very impressive country out there. They turn a lot of cattle out there. Usually turn them out April the 15th, pull them off July the 15th or nearabouts in that time. And it's just very impressive. The cattle can gain routinely 250 to 300 pounds during that short span there. And it's very impressive, but not used to it being dry. Talked to some guys that turn cattle out there, and they've been notified that they can only turn half as many cattle out in some of that lower Flint Hills country there, which is troubling because we're used to turning a lot of cattle out there. But I want to talk to you about a complete disaster that happened in Dimmitt, Texas, very close to me. And I spend a lot of time around Nazareth, Texas. I've got a lot of good friends there and go out there regularly. Help them with some of their events and auctioneering and things like that. But Dimmitt is very close to there. South Fork Dairy in Dimmitt, Texas, or just outside of Dimmitt, Texas, had an explosion on Monday evening. It was one of those dairies that's totally enclosed, one of those modern dairies that's climate controlled. The cows are always inside. Unbelievable facility. I hear that they had 2 milk parlors there with the rotisseries on there. Very high dollar, high tech outfit there. They had one of those honey badger sweepers in there is what they believe happened, that was in there sweeping the alleyways and things like that. Apparently it got overheated, caught on fire. There was no wind in Dimmitt, Texas on Monday evening, which never happens. And so with the ammonia, the cattle, and the smoke from that overheated machine there, they had an explosion. And I'm not talking about a little explosion. I'm talking about a mushroom cloud. And reportedly, there's around 18,000 dead milk cows. Wow. Unbelievable. Can you believe that? But impressively, there was only one employee that was hurt. I hear that it was a female employee. She is critically injured, but expected to recover. They helicoptered her down to Lubbock to the burn unit there, but I think it was mostly smoke inhalation there. But unbelievable disaster at that dairy in Dimmitt, Texas. And I want to talk to you about something totally different. You guys know that I support the sale barns. Till death. I'll support the sale barns. That's why I preach all this. That's why I'm always talking about negotiated prices, price discovery, selling to the highest bidder, all those things. That's why I'm always giving out the high quotes for the day in the brick and mortar sale barns. I want these sale barns to last forever. I'm telling you what, in these small rural communities, the sale barns are the pillar that holds everything together in these small communities, guys. Everybody's moving out, and it's just these little communities are drying up. But if we can keep the sale barns viable, it's a place where rural folks come together. They have fellowship. They visit with each other, share ideas, share their trials and troubles and their successes and their kids and grandkids and all that kind of thing. I would say many, and I may even say most country sale barns have some type of Christian worship regularly in their sale barn sales pavilion there. With the cowboy church deal being real popular right now, most sale barns that I know have something like that in there, and that's just the type of businesses that they are. And I'm going to give you a good example about that. I talk about Beaver County Stockyards. Jeff Slatton and family there. I talk about them all the time. They support us. We support them. They're a customer of ours, and they do such a good job up there in a pretty rural part of the world, no man's land, Oklahoma Panhandle. I give Jeff Slatton a lot of trouble there because he's a native of the country, and they also call that Robber's Roost. No state wanted to claim that little Texas or Oklahoma Panhandle region there. No state wanted to claim it. Nobody wanted it. That's why they called it no man's land. Well, that's where a lot of the outlaws went back in the old West days. They went there to get away from the law, and they called it Robber's Roost. Well, those people ended up settling down there, and then they procreated and had families there, and those people that are native to that country are descendants of those people. So that's why I give Jeff Slatton a hard time on there. But I tell you what, if he doesn't love his community, the people that work at that sale barn would take a bullet for him, and they are always supporting things that help the community in the area up there. And I've told you guys a couple of times about the fundraiser that they were going to have for Bernie Smith, for his family. Bernie Smith was a bull hauler, cattleman in that part of the country there in No Man's Land, Oklahoma. Died tragically of an accident while loading some cattle there just a week and a half or so ago. But they did have the rollover auction at Beaver County Stockyards on Tuesday. They had set a goal for that. They also took donations there in the office if people wanted to call in or come by, and they raised over $50,000 for his family there. And I tell you what, that's pretty impressive, guys. Very impressive. Let's talk about the board. On Tuesday, April live cattle futures up 92 cents, setting an all-time record for the spot futures price. It actually got as high as, I think, 172.45, but it closed at 172.30. Both of those would be all-time record highs for your spot live cattle futures contract. Very impressive there, and I think it's undervalued, especially the June. It was only up a quarter, sitting at 163.95. The market's going to be 180 or better this week for most cattle, especially in the northern plains. I don't know if we'll get 180. We'll sure get up in the high 170s this week in the southern plains. And you've got June live cattle sitting under 164, and we're in mid-April. I tell you what, guys, it looks to me like just an opportunity to jump on it, because at some point these fund investors are going to look at that and realize that they're missing the boat there. Or maybe we just need cash settlement on your live cattle contracts, because the feeder cattle futures stay a whole lot more true and come to fruit a whole lot easier than what your live cattle contract is, because it's just broke. Your back months on live cattle were up 35 cents to up 85 cents. April feeder cattle futures up $1.75 at 202.10, leading your cash prices there, and we're in the spot month. May feeder cattle up $2.20 at 207.82 for next month, guys. But I think it's right in there where it needs to be. Your back months up $1.35 to up 262. Your grains, May corn was down 3 cents at 6.51 a bushel. December new crop down 3.5 cents a bushel at 5.59 1/4. May beans up 10 cents at 14.97 1/4, and November new crop beans up 4.5 at 13.14 1/4. Your fat cattle trade, nothing really on a direct basis in your 5 area feeding region. We saw about a load sell in Iowa at 284 dressed. Nebraska quoted 60 head, and they were mixed bag cattle, which normally sell at a discount. They sold at 285. The highest dress price we quoted last week in the 5 area feeding region was 283. Going to be higher this week, going to be dollars higher again. You negotiated sellers are in the driver's seat. You are leading the whole rest of the industry, guys, and don't think we don't appreciate it, or at least I'm trying to spread the word. Brick and mortar fat cattle auction, Stockman's livestock market, Yankton, South Dakota. A little bit lighter run this week. Had 1,500 head in overnight, 1,800 total, and the market was sharply higher. If you remember last week, your majors that trade in there every week, just like your regional packers, they were kind of holding back a little bit. I think they feared that the market was going to be sharply higher. Your fat cattle were, so they were holding back a little bit in the brick and mortar sale barn that's open transparency where everybody can see. It didn't work. Ended up being a lot higher later in the week on a direct basis. Well, this week they weren't holding back. Conventional cattle, just your regular nuts and bolts cattle, fat cattle, sell from $175 to $179.50. That was $6.50 to $10 higher than last week. Your drug-free cattle bring from $175 to $178, steady to $3 higher. Didn't have the best of quality in there. But what's interesting to me is they're really wanting the non-implanted cattle more so than the drug-free cattle. In comparison, they're giving more money for them. They're assuming that the cattle that are not implanted are going to have a higher quality grade, and that's what they really want, is the higher quality grade, guys. And those non-implanted offerings bring from $181.25 to $185, and that was $1.50 to $5 higher. And you say, well, that can only happen in Yankton, South Dakota, just because that's a perfect storm there with regional packers and your majors in there and all that kind of thing. I talked to a guy in Fairview, Illinois that had fat cattle there. He told me he had a buddy his sell the top end of his fat cattle for $183.50 in Fairview, Illinois at the sale barn there. So it's amazing what competitive bidding will do. And then they do that earlier in the week. It's open transparency, price discovery, and then we know where we're at. Market's going to be higher again, guys. Box beef cutout values sharply higher on Tuesday. Choice cuts up $219 at $295.10. Selects up $364 at $282.04. Your slaughter, very disappointing. And like I said, it's worse for your packers than it is for us. Normally a light slaughter is bearish, but your packers are wanting to ramp up slaughter. But I did hear that a major packer in the Texas Panhandle has backed off. They had already quit Saturday kill. Now they're going to just 4 days a week, only 32 hours a week of slaughter, guys. That is how tight supplies are. It is very, very tight. They're backing up a little bit. Slaughter for the first 2 days of this week, 239,000. That's 4,000 less than last week's disappointing slaughter and 10,000 less than the same week a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. Mark Reck at Rec Agra, he's got that RGM Corporation ranch consigned for sale. 13,400 acres there, more than that. It's a stewardship award-winning native grass ranch, and some of that grass is in CRP. That's a good thing. That's income for whoever buys it there until it goes out. But just unbelievable facilities they got there, modern facilities, a nice home on it, 27 pastures cut up there with good fences on them, unbelievable water, 45 tanks in those pastures, guys, out there for water. Cattle don't have to go very far for water for as big a place as that is. It's a turnkey deal. All the equipment and personal property goes with that. Get a hold of Mark Reck at recagra.com. Ask him about that ranch. See what it's going to take to get it bought. Keep it in cattle. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DV auction. Late in the day on Tuesday, sitting at $200.55. Broke $2 a pound on your real-time index. That's based on an 800-pound cash auction steer up through your middle 12 states, guys. And that's a big threshold to break. Haven't seen that since it come down from the highs in 2015. But that $200.55 was $3.65 higher than the end of Monday's trade. Now you look at your CME cash feeder cattle index, it's sitting down there at 193. You think, wow, something's jacked up with the RTI. Why is it sitting up there over $200 there? Well, we just cover so many more sales than your Federal State Market News does, which is where CME comes up with their feeder cattle index. I'm going to show you the reason why it's sitting so far back there. Of course, it's a day or two behind, but it's not going to reach the levels that the real-time index is at probably for another week or two, because they don't cover the sales that are getting these kind of prices out there. And it's mostly in South Dakota. South Dakota's an auction state, guys. A lot of big strings of cattle, most of them sell at auction. They don't cover Faith, South Dakota. They don't cover Yankton, South Dakota. They don't cover Kimball Livestock Exchange in Kimball, South Dakota. And so they're missing out on the big prices, guys. You got to have the big prices to get your index levels up where they need to be. Talk about your big sales on Tuesday. Ozarks Regional Stockyard, West Plains, Missouri, had 2,900 head through the ring. Another over 400 head on their in-house video they do with help from DV Auction. Yearlings there, steers and heifers, sell $4 to $6 higher. Steer and heifer calves in West Plains sell $6 to $12 higher, with spots as much as $16 higher. And you think, oh my gosh, that market reporter must be nuts. No, he's not. Dan Hill is a good guy. He was trained by somebody that was very well versed in what he was doing there. And Dan Hill calls a conservative market. Calves were $6 to $12 higher, spots $16 higher. He calls a conservative market because that's the way he was trained. These people that are doing it, especially in lower Kansas, have not had any training, and that's why they are all over the board there. But talk about a stick-out deal in West Plains. 182 steers weighed 572 at 241.50. That was not near the high on your heavy 5 weights, but a big string of mixed steers there, guys, and that's a pretty good quote. How about Denny Rezac Livestock Commission, St. Mary's, Kansas? Tend to sell in the evenings this time of year. Look at these loads of yearling steers there that sold late in the day, weighing from 8.5 to 950 pounds, and they bring from 185 to 199.75 in St. Mary's, Kansas. Your Zoetis stick-out sale of the day was Kimball Livestock Exchange in Kimball, South Dakota. 4,600 head there. It was unbelievable, the market that they had there. Of course, every day it's unbelievable, but on Tuesday it was Kimball Livestock Exchange. Over 4,600 feeders through there, guys. You're not going to get this market information anywhere else unless Kimball pays for it. But right here on the Feeder Flash and Cattle Market Central, you see this automated market report. Look at your best tested weights. 1,007 head of steers weighed in the 7-weight category. They averaged 760 pounds with a weighted average price on all of them, over 1,000 of them, at $223.24. How about 1,148 head of 8-weight steers in Kimball, South Dakota? Had an average weight of 837 pounds. Weighted average price on nearly 1,150 of them of $214.26. Now you see why the real-time index is over $2 a pound. How about the heifers? 396 head of 6-weight heifers, average 660, weighted average price 206.78. 874 heifers in the 7-weight category, average 740 pounds, weighted average price 201.56. And 333 head of 8-weight heifers, average 820 at 190.56. Very impressive. Beaver County Stockyards, I talked about them earlier on the Bernie Smith deal. They sell some Pee-wee calves, pulled right off the cow there. Still had milk mustaches. 75 head of them, weighed 453 at 266.25. How about Winter Livestock in La Junta, Colorado? I have heard that John Campbell is alive and well, people. I miss him too, but he's still selling cattle there and getting a price for them in a dry part of the country. 86 head of them, weighed 568. Steers bring 247. How about Bluegrass Stockyards? Lexington, Kentucky sells 110 steers, weigh 835 at $202. See why the real-time index needs to be over $2 a pound. Kentucky's not even in your index quotes. It's outside the 12-state area, and they're bringing 202, weighing 835. But your most impressive quote that I saw anywhere on Tuesday, your Mackerson No BS top quote for the day, indeed come out of Kimball Livestock Exchange, and it was a big string of steers, 245 head of them, weighed 881 at 213 1/4. And that's your feeder flash for Wednesday.